Okay, we're going to start the meeting for the Port of Bellingham Board of Commissioners, meeting for Tuesday, July 16th, 2024. Welcome to everybody. I'll start by a roll call. Commissioner Briscoe.
Here.
Commissioner Shepard.
Also here.
Commissioner Bell is here. We start these meetings with a open session. I only see one name, and let me guess, Bert Weber, what you'd like to talk about. I know exactly, but I would love to have an update.
So,
By the way, good to see you.
Yeah, you too. My name is Bert Weber. I live 3935 Cliffside Drive and have been a participant in Port of Bellingham activities for 30, 40 years. So I have a history with you guys. Okay, the topic I do have, though, is the matter of lead in aviation fuel. And I've talked with you a few times about it and get a generous reception, but of course nothing ever happens. And now I wanted just to bring an update for some things that you may or may not have heard about the situation now. First, it has been spread around, and I heard quite in a few places, that the number of complaints has significantly decreased over last year. And I would like to point out that if you remember the graph that was up there showing the complaints that mostly came from two people. I was one of those two people. And at the end of last year, I gave up putting in complaints. It wasn't worth my time, wasn't worth time for the airport to have to deal with it. It's a burden on the complaint form, so I just give it up. And so it turned out that half of the complaints were ones that I put in. And I don't call them complaints, they're just observations of planes that are not following the noise abatement procedures. So if you've heard that things are getting better because the complaints are getting fewer, it's not the case. Okay, so the second, somebody, and it's been said that one of the things we can't really do is anything unless there is a problem there. And we have not any evidence that there is a problem of lead coming from the combustion of small vehicles. Well, now you know, and I hope you all know, that there is a significant contamination of the airport from lead, or at least lead in the atmosphere on airport grounds. Does everybody know that? Have you all heard that there is lead that has been measured? Has the airport not the port been? I'm sure that the information got out. I'm just not sure. So it's a good thing that I can share it with you. There is lead on the airport grounds that comes from contamination from aircraft operations using leaded fuel. Now, we don't know for sure how much it is or how widespread it is, and I think at the very least, the airport and the port should expand the studies that were done by a professor at Western Washington University, and it's going to go to press here pretty soon, so you will have another way of hearing about it. But be clear, lead is there, and we know, not sure how much or how much of an area, but all the evidence that has been obtained by the federal government in the last 5 years is that any lead is a human health hazard. So, in my mind, we have a human health hazard at the airport, and the airport should do something about that. Okay. Do what? What could you do? Well, you could get rid of selling leaded fuel to the aircraft that use it. That, I'm not sure, but it's a very small percent, maybe 3% of the general aviation planes that need leaded fuel. The rest of them don't. And if you look at what the FAA says, they set a criterion. I'll go back one step. The engine manufacturers for all those Cessna 180s and 170s set an octane level of 80. Anything above that is okay. And that's something you'll hear from the aircraft people, that we like to have higher octane for that. The evidence that a higher octane level does any good for the engine is really sketchy. In fact, it's negative, but that's a whole nother question. The thing is that that the leaded fuel is a contaminant that is spreading into the environment. Is there an option? Well, the FAA has stepped in. The FAA has dictated, out of a measure of caution, that any fuel that is going to be used in small aircraft has to be 90 octane. Okay, so you got a 90 octane level, and the other thing that has to happen is you can't have ethanol in it. It's not good for the plumbing of the planes. So then, do we have 90 octane level gas available? Because that's another problem that some pilots have. It is very much available. It's from the gas station just down the corner. So there's no reason for not using that gas. And what I would like to see is for the airport to make these facts clear to the pilots, that there is a fact, there is a problem with the lead. You can have that non-leaded gasoline and run your planes just safely. So hopefully the airport, they say they're working on it. And Kip, bless his soul, because I really like the job he's doing at the airport. But on this case of getting lead out of the gas, not so good. There's no reason why the airport can't set up a non-leaded fuel source in the airport and let pilots know that it's okay. So there we are. I guess the burden in part runs on the Port of Bellingham to know that there is lead contamination at the airport and in the atmosphere, and something should be done about that. Okay, thanks very much for your time. Any questions?
Do you have a link or a copy of the report you could share with us, Bert?
I don't. However, it's David Shull, whom you probably know. I think you're in the same building. No, he's in another building. Anyway, he's the one that has done the job. And I saw a report, and my understanding was that it was going to be sent to the Port of Bellingham so they'd have that information. Okay. But he could, I hope I'm not getting myself in trouble giving his name out, but he's the one that can validate the fact. And then it's not like it's hugely widespread across the airport, but it's present. And that, I think, is an indication that the port should do something about getting better information about what the lead contamination on the airport and in the airport's vicinity is. To me, it's a question of liability. We know it's not healthy. We know it's a human health hazard. And at some point, I wonder what the airport is going to say when, oh, we knew about it, but we didn't do anything about it. So, thanks very much.
Thank you, Bert.
I have some comments, Bert, but we'll save them for offline. We'll talk later. And I would really love to find that 90 octane non-ethanol gas, because I've got an old pickup truck.
It's right there.
It's not 90.
92.
Not. We'll talk offline.
Okay.
It's a 1952 Chevy pickup, by the way. It's great. All right. Anybody else wishing to speak before the commission? We will have another opportunity at the end of the meeting for anybody who gets moved during the meeting to want to say something. All right, I'm going to announce the advisory committee meeting schedule. The Bellingham International Airport Advisory, Bert, Committee is going to meet July 18th at 4 p.m. It is also available by Zoom. Again, that's July 18th at 4 PM. And if you don't zoom in, it's at the Airport Rescue Firefighting Station, 2005 West Bakerview Road. That's the ARC building. The Marine Advisory Committee is taking the summer off. They will not meet again until September 10th at 6 PM. So you're free to enjoy the summer on the water, as you should. All right, with that, we will go to an announcement. We have a new hire. Our new hire is our HR, Riley Wynn.
Hi there, Riley Wynn, HR Director here at the Port.
Did you warn her?
I did, yeah. Tonight, I have the pleasure of introducing our new hire, Jennifer Gunderson. Jennifer started with us on July 1st at the Port. She comes to us with a history in public sector HR as well as some advocacy work. She's going to be contributing to our HR team clearly and focusing on our hiring and our onboarding. I think that's all I've got for Jennifer. Welcome, Jennifer.
Welcome, Jennifer. Where do you come to us from?
I am here from the city of Anacortes, and then I worked at Skagit County Superior Court before that.
Are you commuting? Or,
No, I live in Bellingham. I've lived here for about 9 years now.
oh, you commuted to Anacortes?
I did,
Whoa,
yeah.
welcome home.
Much better commute now.
Welcome to the port.
Thank you, I'm excited to be here.
All right, we'll move on to our consent agenda.
Motion to approve consent agenda items A through K.
Commissioner Briscoe, do you have anything?
Oh, I don't.
Commissioner Shepard?
I just wanted to talk through item G. I know it's a big budget, it's a big project. It seems like a large number of budget reallocations, and I'm wondering if you could just walk us through them, Rob, or is the point person on it?
Larry's going to handle that one.
Hello, Larry Skolton, Senior Project Engineer for the Port. You wanted just the whole list of the
Yeah,
dollar
tell us a
amounts?
little bit more about the budget reallocations, and it seems like a number of them all at once, and a large cost associated. Were these unexpected, or did we kind of have an idea that these might come through like this?
Okay, so a couple of them, so let's see, let's start from the top. I might as well go down the list. Well, so the first one is the reallocation. There was some money in the budget from McCamus, the damage that occurred. So that's stuff money we already had, and that would just be reallocating it, like you said, to the heavy lift area. And I just didn't even realize that money was there back in, I think, November when I was here last, and Dave reminded me of that. So that just, it's trying to be transparent. It makes my number less, but my number really isn't less. It just happened to be there. Let's see. So 430,000 in mitigation, that's another one. I left that off last time. It's a below the line item. I was looking at design costs. I was looking at construction costs. I didn't even think of mitigation costs. So that's been there all along. I just didn't have it in the numbers for you last time. So then the dredging number, the 540,000 of extra dredging we're anticipating. We tried to save some money by not going out and getting a new dredge survey done before we went out for ad. So we used a 2019 dredge survey, and in that amount of time, the quantities changed, and so it would have been there. We would have known beforehand if we would have, spent the 10, 20,000 to have a survey. So it was a risk that we took on when we decided not to spend that money, but it would have been there anyway. It would have been there. Let's see.
On that dredging, do we feel, are things silting in at a pretty steady rate, or has rate of siltation, I don't quite know if that's the right word, if that is increasing over time, or are we at a pretty steady rate?
No, it increases over time, definitely. It's not very much, we haven't seen a whole lot in the last 6 months. The accuracy of the survey doesn't show that. And just the floor bottom moves depending on storms and stuff like that. So I think it might have been more that, more of that. But there is constant set, over 20 years, 30 years, you're going to get it. I mean, that's why we're dredging.
Yeah.
I was kind of looking at it because we're looking at doing the same thing for the harbors. And I mean, we could probably come up with some numbers on how fast they're, it's coming in a rate. I just haven't figured that out.
Do we have an idea how long this dredge will last before we have to do another round of maintenance dredging?
Well, I don't know when the last time we did dredging out. I mean, that last commission meeting, it was talked about how it was kind of just, we're just let it go, let the shipping terminal go. I can't remember when the last time this was dredged. We're going to come back through in the near future to do a cleanup, which is going to go deeper than this maintenance dredging. So that'll help because, there'll be some maintenance dredging that will happen, but it'll be a lot less quantity, and I think it'll take a while before it's needed again.
Okay.
When you get out like the 200 feet that we're going, we're only talking, we only need a few inches type thing to dredge, just to get us back decades. So it's really the stuff that's building up against the shipping terminal. Anyway, that's just where it tends to accumulate. That's where the water slows down and more sedimentation happens.
Okay.
Structure-related repairs. So this one's just kind of an opportunity. Again, I guess go back 2 years. We knew that there was a couple things that didn't look like they were in great condition and that we should probably replace maybe some whalers and some chocks and stuff like that. But the costs were going up and we're like, hey, everything looks pretty good. Let's just let it go. It should be, and we'll plan a future replacement. Well, now's the time. Essentially, the stuff is pretty much dominoed. You get one whaler, which is what is between the, so you have a ship and then you have a fender pile, which the ship rubs up against. And then you have a whaler, which kind of spreads that weight out across the structure itself. And those have started deteriorating, the piles are deteriorating, and so you get one to start fall, and it just pulls down others. You get fender piles that get damaged or are just rotting in place, and it's amazing. I mean, I'm really surprised at how much, at the condition it is now compared to 2 years ago. And we were doing a permit update. We knew that this was, we'd had some damaged piles, so I took the opportunity to add that to the permit for this project. It gives us an opportunity to ask our contractor, who is already on site, to do that, to give us some costs, and hopefully we can get some benefit out of that by not having a new contractor having to mow in. So again, it has been in disrepair, and really what I wanted was for this project to be, when it's done, I want Matt to be able to sell the place. I don't want us to have to go back and do these little repairs. We don't need, actually we do, we need it. If we don't do it, then more damage is probably going to happen. Right now, we're overloading smaller segments. When, so you have a 600-foot ship and you're putting it on 60 feet of piles, it would be much better to put that 600 feet on 600 feet of piles, fender piles. So it'll spread the load out better and they'll last longer and keep working. There's also a few upland repairs. So some of the utility vaults got overloaded with some of the loading that happens out there. McCamus is heavy loads. The ABC recycling trucks were heavy loads. We're just going to go with essentially airport level vaults, and we should have no problem with those. So that's the structural, I think that's the 500,000 trucks, wheelers, utility vaults. Okay, and then I have about 450,000, 446 in consultant costs, terminal repairs, to design terminal repairs, upland soil sampling, and grant administration. So let's start with the soil sampling. We have what we think is clean soil, but because of the location where there's other known contaminants, we have to actually go in and test the soil that we think is clean to make sure it's clean so that when we put it at a dump, we aren't carrying the risk of contaminating the soil at the, a greater volume of soil at the dump, at the gravel pits. And that was just missed by the design team. Let's see. And then design costs and stuff like that associated with some of the other stuff I've already talked about, including like third-party inspection. So again, something I didn't really anticipate, but when you're building a structure, like the city code requires that you bring in a third party to evaluate the structure that your consultant or contractor is building. And essentially I think it's a way for the city not to have to come out and do inspection, or it allows you to get a professional in there that really knows what they're doing and looking at to evaluate. So again, costs that I didn't really anticipate. I've been kind of a civil guy my whole life, or my whole career. So, and then again, another unanticipated cost, the 170,000 that's a high number. Post-dredge sediment sampling. So this comes with, again, dredging in an area that's a known contaminated site, and as part of, I don't know if it's a consent decree or agreed order, but it's required that when you dredge in that area, you have to do a post-dredge sampling. And it's labor intensive and cost intensive because you have to get all the samples taken, with the boat, and then you have to get them tested and various tests and stuff like that. I'm sure Ben or Brian would be much better at explaining that one.
Okay.
I think that was it. That's all the things I had highlighted anyway.
All right, thank you. That was informative.
So the only thing, Mr. Skolnick, gives me a little pause is that you said you saw some of these things coming and thought that they were going to get more expensive. Are there more of these in the hopper? Is there anything that you're looking forward to and saying we may need to do this because it's marginal?
No,
I mean, the
I
patient's
think,
cut open. We might as well.
yeah, this really, it really takes care of most all the issues I think I've seen out there. I mean, we're still gonna have docks that are underrated for some of the work we wanna do in the future, but that's a future decision that a lot of those will be decided in the Wakamarwa cleanup project, because they'll be getting in there. No, this is, I mean, the whole whalers and chocks and fender piles thing, they looked in really good condition. There was one that was kind of falling down. It's like, oh, maybe something got hit or something. And then they really started just showing, what condition they were in. So, I don't know if we expected it to happen. It just was, hey, there's a couple that need to be repaired, but we'll let it go for now. But no, knowing now what I've seen happen over the last 2 years, I think this will really get us in a good situation where we can bring commerce in and ships and be able to handle them.
Don't happen to have any other places where you are looking for more money that happens to be hidden somewhere?
No, I mean, this
looking.
includes, this rebuilds my $1 million contingency, which is about 4%. So hopefully we'll have that $1 million left over when we're done, but, they haven't even started driving piles and stuff yet, so.
Thanks.
And dredging began again for phase 2, so they're at it this morning.
All right.
Is that all you got?
Yep.
And I've got nothing.
Right.
By the way, it looks great. I went out there to look at Love it. Love the fact that we're doing it. Hey, Bobby. Good to see you. All right, we're ready to vote.
Motion to approve consent agenda items A through K.
Commissioner Briscoe? Commissioner Shepard?
Yes.
Commissioner Bell is a yes. For those who didn't hear, Commissioner Briscoe was a yes. All right, presentations, dry dock sailing. Jeff, come on.
Right here. Jeff.
I come over. Thank you. Thank you for your
Good afternoon. I am Annika Bjorkman, Senior Property Manager in the Real Estate Department, and I am here to introduce Jeff Vernon with the Yacht Yard. He's here to talk to you about upland boat storage and dry sailing.
And how do I scroll back and forth? Is it just toggle left, toggle right?
I think so. Is it just the arrows? Yeah.
Okay. Greetings, commissioners and attendees. My name is Jeff Vernon. I migrated to Bellingham in 1987 to go to Western. Like many others, I never left after graduating. Any sailors in the room? Excellent. All right. We have a moorage crisis. The Port of Bellingham, in fact, most marinas have moorage crises. There's a limited number of slip and dock spaces available and an overwhelming number of people trying to acquire them. In fact, there are so many people trying to acquire slips in Bellingham that the port no longer has a waiting list for permanent slips. The port's protocol for acquiring a slip in Bellingham requires that you go to Blaine and get your name on the list in Blaine. After you acquire a slip in Blaine, you are then given priority in Bellingham when a slip becomes available. So I would like to introduce some terms and concepts. Wet moorage, which is basically defined as a boat that lives in the water and is tied up to a dock or mooring ball when not in use. Mooring in a marina typically requires a basin, dredging, docks, ramps that allow for tidal exchange, breakwaters, electrical, freshwater infrastructure, and a multitude of other things that I am unaware of. With wet moorage, more boats translates to an increased number of docks, a larger basin, more dredging, and more infrastructure. All of these items are extremely costly to install and maintain. Wet mooring is an expensive proposition for both the marina and boat owners. With available shoreline being a limited factor, oftentimes the number of boats that can be moored in a geographical region is limited. So here's another term. I made it up. There might be another term that's more official, but I'm going to call it the boat to dock space ratio. A wet moored boat requires a significant amount of dock space. This space includes far more space than the slip to which she is tied up and when she is not in use. The dock space also includes the tributary docks that are required to gain access to the slip as well as ramps. The key point is that a great deal of dock space is required to moor a wet boat. Okay, the cold, hard facts of boat life. A boat spends most of its life tied up and self-destructing at the dock. In a saltwater marine environment, a boat is continually subject to harsh environmental conditions that include electrolysis, corrosion, water intrusion into wood and fiberglass hull components, biofouling, which is organisms that include algae, barnacles, marine worms, and mollusks. Without protective measures, underwater metallic boat components are continually dissolving. In order to retard the self-destructive processes that occur as a result of a boat simply sitting in the water, special bottom paints that include compounds that are toxic to marine life are applied to boat bottoms. Other products such as paints, primers, and moisture barriers that are extremely toxic to work with are used to minimize water intrusion into the hull. These products require maintenance and periodic removal and replacement to remain effective. Sacrificial anodes, typically composed of zinc, are installed to protect submerged metallic components and do so by dissociating into the water. Many of these compounds end up sloughing off or leaching into the water, creating environmental concerns that the EPA is continually monitoring, as you all know. Well, lucky for you, I have a solution. I'd like to introduce dry mooring or dry sailing. Dry sailing is defined as a boat that lives on the hard in a trailer or on a cradle and is ramp launched or crane hoisted into the water. Boats that are dry sailed are only kept in the water when they are in use. This minimizes the amount of time that a boat is subject to the destructive marine environment, ultimately reducing measures that need to be taken to preserve the boat. Environmentally, this is a big plus because it eliminates the needs for toxic bottom paints and sacrificial anodes. A dry sailed boat also requires far less maintenance to protect the hull from water intrusion that results from being constantly immersed. Dry moorage also reduces the amount of dock space required to moor a boat, as well as increases the number of boats that can be serviced in a boat basin of any given size. Simply put, more moorage capacity translates to more boats having access to the water, a happier public, and more revenue for the port. So I'm going to show you some pictures of some dry sailing / moorage facilities. Okay, this is just a photo of boats living on the hard, and you can see that they're side by side. There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 boats occupying a space that might take 2 or 3 boats if we were given a dock system. Just more boats on trailers in the hard. They live on trailers or in cradles and get dollied over to where there'd be a crane. Here's a boat that's on a trailer that's at the crane, getting lifted off of the trailer. Here's another one, and I believe this is up in Vancouver. This is a boat being lowered into the water. This is a dry sailed boat out of season that's being stored, whereas most wet sailed boats sit in the slip, occupying a great deal of space. This is looking down at our Gillnet loading zone at the dock facility that we have where we drop our boats in the water with a crane. Okay, so let's move on to the local sailing scene and the beginnings of dry sailing in Bellingham. Bellingham is a port that has a long history of competitive sailing that goes back no less than 5 decades. The sailing fleet has boasted Wednesday night evening buoy racing turnouts that exceeded 50-plus boats during the late 70s and early 80s. Each of these boats had crews that ranged from 3 to 10 people per boat. With 50 boats and a mean crew size of 6, Bellingham Wednesday night beer can racing provided a weekly getaway for about 300 people over the course of spring, summer, and early fall. Many of these boats were moored in the water. Some were not. A group of sailors started dry sailing a competitive class of 29-foot boats called Etchels. The boats were moored on trailers with their masts up. On any given Wednesday race night, the crew would come down to the boat, hook the boat up to the family station wagon, and tow it to the crane located at the Gillnet loading zone. The boat would then be lifted off the trailer and lowered into the water within 30 minutes. The boat and her crew could be on their way out to the race course for a midweek evening beer can race. The fact that the boat could keep the mast up while driving to the crane made dry sailing possible. Putting a mast up and taking one down requires several hours. If a mast had to be stepped and lowered every time crane launching was performed, it would be impossible for most to dry sail on Wednesday evenings. Dry sailing has always been a bit challenging in Bellingham. We share a crane with a commercial fleet, and dry storage mast-up crane access has always been difficult to find as the port hasn't made any great provisions to accommodate the dry sailing community. There are times that the sailing access to the crane is not possible. At times, the crane is understandably being used to load and offload commercial fishing boats. There are other times that boats or vehicles are left unattended in the no parking and loading zone only spaces. This makes crane access impossible, and sometimes, several times a year, prevents the dry sailed fleet from getting access into the water for the evening. For the last 11 years, I've operated a small fenced and gated boatyard located at 2551 Roeder, formerly known as City Mac, from a private building owner on port property. Our boat yard, named the Yacht Yard, dry moors 30 to 35 boats, depending on the size. The Yacht Yard is the only fenced and gated facility in Bellingham to offer dry moorage for sailboats, with mast up, crane, and ramp launching access. Typically, we have approximately 15 dry-sailed boats in the fenced yard. The yard also accommodates non-race sailboats as well as a handful of powerboats. The yard is small and simple, but it provides a way for sailors to dry sail their boats without having to take the mast down. So it's crisis time for the dry sailing community. Recently, the Port of Bellingham purchased the building located at 2551 Roeder from the private owner. The real estate division has decided to repurpose the building in the boatyard to something more marine-related. The real estate division has been saying since February of this year that they were working on a way to relocate the sailors. So far, no new locations have been provided, and the real estate division's representatives have started including the phrase, "but no promises," with their statement to relocate the fleet. In an effort to accommodate the sailors, the port has graciously decided to allow the boats to stay in the yard until August 31st. It's a date that they have determined it was the end of the sailing season, failing to recognize that Pitch, Bellingham's largest keelboat regatta, is Labor Day weekend, and that Bellingham still has beer can and distance races going into October. It's become increasingly obvious that there is no communication between the port and the sailing fleet. To better this, I would like to suggest that we have a liaison-type relationship between the port and the sailing fleet. Without a place to moor dry-sailed boats, Bellingham is at risk of losing its fleet to ports that provide dry moorage, mast-up crane ramp, launching facilities. The closest locations being Anacortes, Shilshil, and Vancouver. All three of these locations have provided up-to-date dry moorage and mast-up crane access launching facilities for their fleets. These fleets are thriving and growing. Bellingham's fleet is struggling, largely in part due to the lack of necessary infrastructure required to dry sail. At a recent commissioners' meeting, deepwater port improvements and airport enlargements were topics of discussion. The question of who would use the deepwater port and the enlarged airport was brought up as a concern. Several commissioners' reply to the query was, "Build and they will come." The philosophy has most recently been seen on port property with the building of the Trackside Village and pump pipe track located on the old Georgia Pacific site. It is booming and an asset to the community that captures the interests of all ages, gives use a focus, and something to be passionate about. This would also be applicable for a dry sailing facility. The following are groups that would benefit from dry sailing in our community. Bellingham has a junior program run by the local yacht club and headed by Megan Reed. A competitive high school sailing team headed by Scott Wilson. The Western Washington University Sailing Program. A local community boating center that offers ramp launching for dinghies, but lacks crane facilities for small keelboats and racers. And there are racers from 3 local yacht clubs. Furthermore, dry sailing also reduces costs, making it more affordable to a broader range of economic classes. Additionally, Bellingham Bay offers great sailing conditions. It is centrally located halfway between Seattle and Vancouver. It is a perfect location for international events. The vast majority of racing teams have transitioned to trailerable sailboats. Teams travel throughout the U.S. and Canada to national and world-level competitions. It is not uncommon for a U.S.-based team to travel to Canada, California, Texas, the Great Lakes, the East Coast, or even Key West, Florida for competition. All of these events require dry moorage, mast-up crane access. Providing a modern crane launching facility with dry moorage would put Bellingham on the map for these events. Looking at the crowds that Hannigan Speedway and the track side, as of this weekend, draw when there is a well-organized event, it becomes obvious that these gatherings pull outsiders into the community and provide a substantial boost to the local economy that reverberates throughout the city. So the port's mission statement is to promote sustainable economic development, optimize transportation gateways, and manage publicly owned land and facilities to benefit Whatcom County. I have demonstrated how maintaining and ultimately updating Bellingham's dry sailing facility and accommodating the sailors, racers, and youth programs fulfills all aspects of the port's mission statement. At this point in time, we are in need of a temporary solution that either allows sailors to continue using the space formerly known as the yacht yard or provides a new temporary location. It has been suggested that areas near Commercial Gate 5, in the parking lot along Rotor near Gate 9, or in the parking lot near Zwanich Boathouse are viable options. The port's announcement to close the boatyard and failure to produce a viable temporary solution has already had a negative impact on the fleet, with boats scattering and numerous owners contemplating relocation to different ports or selling their boats. The regularly full yard at 2551 Rotor is at less than 50% occupancy since the port's real estate division's announcement and takeover. So we are looking for a more permanent solution, one that either A, involves the port building a facility, B, leasing space to a special interest group that includes a bulkhead with adequate depth for launching a fixed keel boat and a parking area for dry moorage. The special interest group would then develop the area into a dry moorage center with mast up crane access. Or another option, C, since the port doesn't appear to have rented the space located at 2551 Rotor, one option would be for the port to separate the building from the yard and dedicate the space to dry sailing. A dock on pilings with a crane could be constructed on the other side of the walkway adjacent to the yard. Excuse me. Boats could be moved with an electric dolly from the yard to the pier. Shilshil and Anacortes have similar facilities. Either way, with a population nearing 100,000 and the local natural resources Bellingham has warrants a dry sailing facility. So, and this is just a list provided by sailors between here and California of some of the locations that have dry sailing associated with them. So in closing, I would like to say thank you to the commissioners for granting me the time to present, and thank you to all who attended.
Commissioner Shepherd, do you have any questions? Comments? Don't go too far.
I don't think I have any questions. Thanks for the presentation. As you know, space is tight in the harbor, and I think our team always does a good job of looking for what's available, but there's a lot of demand, as you know. I think this is useful for us to have some internal discussions and figure out if there are any other options. We could maybe get an update, Rob, at some point from you about what the prospects for tenants are, and if there are any opportunities for us to consider extending till October for their temporary use, so we can get them through the rest of the sailing summer season.
Yeah, and Commissioner, I committed to go through the season. I didn't set an arbitrary date of August 31st. I said they could stay through the season, so I think there's some miscommunication there. But
That is not what has been conveyed to us by the real estate
we can sit here and argue, we can come up with solutions, but I committed to going through the end of the season, and that means we'll go through the end of the season.
Thank you. Is it possible to have any of the sailors in the room come up and comment? People who are part of the fleet?
Yeah, we've got a couple more questions, though, if you don't mind
Okay,
going
certainly.
through the commissioner stuff.
Yeah, I'll pass for now.
Commissioner Briscoe?
Yeah, where was the, can you hear me okay?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, where was the yard prior to moving into the computer lot there?
It was kind of widespread. There were some spaces over by where top to bottom is. It wasn't much. That was a decade ago, and it has, the number of people dry sailing has grown since then.
How many people in total do we have dry sailing in Bellingham?
No less than 15.
All right, thanks.
So when you were at full capacity, how many boats were in the yard? You said you were at 50%, so how many would you
Yeah,
have? in the
there were 30 at the time. And I'm not concerned about preserving the yacht yard. I'm just looking for a space to accommodate our community.
Okay, and I'm just going to argue a little bit against splitting the yard at the current CD current building, because that does reduce and diminish its viability for other opportunities. So I do think we need a deeper conversation before any of that happens.
Certainly.
We have higher expectations for that building and that lot and that site, and I just want to make sure that we're not precluding any of that as we go forward. I clearly see the need for more boat storage. That's just not even a question, and this is a viable alternative. So don't get the impression that we're not trying. At least I hope you're not getting that impression, because at least from my standpoint, I'm hoping that we're trying to accommodate you. The second question I've got is, have you got any private options outside of within reaching distance of the port for storage locations?
So the challenge is getting to the cranes with the masts up. There's not a lot of options. You know, and some boats leave the yard and ramp launch. There's a handful that are capable of that, but not very many. And a couple of boats have not navigated things properly and hit their masts on things and dropped rigs, a rig being a mast. But still, they continue to do it. You know, crane access is essential. You know, and we've been pretty quiet and thankful that we've had the opportunity to use the Gillnet loading zone crane. We're not complaining about that in the least. But the thought of losing the ability, that's one of the reasons that I didn't leave Bellingham after graduating from Western, is I fell in love with sailing and racing. It's a big draw. And if we had better facilities, it would grow.
Commissioners, the Gillnet loading zone is not ideal for the sailors or the fishermen. It's less than ideal for that. We have a upland storage problem throughout the port that we need to address, and I think I'm going to recommend to the Commission that we put this on a future agenda item, and it's probably September, October-ish, to discuss dry storage in totality, not just for the sailors, but in totality. As we're coming up to rebuild our inner harbor, we all recognize that we've got to do something with a lot of boats while we're rebuilding the harbor, and upland storage is going to be critical for that. So we have some discussions to be had there, and I'm happy to put this on a September or October agenda item.
Yeah, I would appreciate that. Commissioner Briscoe, did you have more? I think I cut you off.
I did, but in listening to what was going on, I kind of, so if there was a yard during the sailing season, can these vessels be moved to a storage for the winter other than that launching yard? The reason I ask that is because in the summertime, a lot of our commercial vessels are not loading, unloading, or not using the port. But in the wintertime, they do.
So
the mast can be lowered, and these vessels can be taken to a different type of storage other than the loading area for launching and racing.
Typically, if I understand your question correctly, the boats are put away for a few months out of the year. And while not impossible for them to be relocated, it's difficult. Some people have property that allows them to park them in a driveway, and other people live in apartments. So am I going down the right path?
I didn't necessarily mean move them off of port property, but to a different area on port property that they can be stored in the wintertime, so they're not in a particular area.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
I have a question about the economics. So what the economics of, let's say, a typical 30-foot boat in a storage area like this compared to wet storage? How does that compare?
You know, I don't have exact numbers, but what I can tell you is that you can put a lot more dry sailed boats in a given area than you can wet-sailed boats. I think that economically the port could come out to where it's a moneymaker. Other ports do.
I'm not even worried about the port. I'm just saying, if I'm a user of your service, am I paying for all of the services that are involved in that? Am I paying more or am I paying less than if I were to moor my boat on a typical 30-foot wet storage dock?
Definitely less.
So the user has a much reduced. And how much are economics constraining your ability to find another place?
How much are economics? Right now, space is the key word. Having a bulkhead to launch things and move forward on. There's just not a lot. I spoke with Elliott Smith earlier about several locations, one of them being, I'm going to use the term Glass Beach. If you look to the right, there's, I think it's an old coal loading dock. Am I correct? There where trains used to come in. There's a bulkhead in there, and the response that I was given that quite possibly that's going to be dedicated to Homeland Security, Customs, and things like that, and we'd all need TWIC cards to get in there. But if I've got sailors that are willing to chip in and buy a boom truck so that we can lift our own boats in and out of the water. We just need a bulkhead and the ability to drag a floating dock in, tie it up, that could be lifted out with a boom truck at the end of the season. So those are all viable options. But it's definitely less to dry sail a boat. It's less maintenance environmentally. You're miles ahead. You know, all you have to do is go to the commercial fleet over in that basin and look at the water and know that there's issues with leaving boats in the water.
By Glass Beach, are you talking about the end of Cornwall?
Yes. Yes.
Yeah, that's definitely a secured area.
Okay. A bulkhead is what we need.
Yeah. And if I'm correct, if we're thinking about the different types of dry stack of storage, there's dry stack, which can be stacked multiple boats high. That's separate from what you're thinking of here, because this requires mostly trailers, mass up.
Correct. If you go to Lake Union, you'll see 4 to 5 high dry stacked rows of runabouts. Unfortunately, a sailboat has a thing called a mast that occupies a lot of vertical space. But we can get them pretty close if we have 18 inches between boats, 24 inches between boats.
Well, we need all of the above. In future consideration for the ASB renovations, do we expect to have bulkhead and crane facilities that would accommodate this type of use?
We definitely have bulkheads in there. We've been talking travel lifts more so than cranes, but that doesn't mean it can't be changed. But yeah, the ASB is going to have one big, long bulkhead.
Can these boats use a travel lift, or do they have to use a
No,
crane?
they can't use a travel lift because of the mast.
Correct. And most of these boats are set up with a single pick point. So the cranes are basically I'm going to use the term pylon. There's probably another term for it, but it's a tube that goes up. Then they have an I-beam that sticks out laterally, and there's just like we have here. And they've got a single pick point on them. So you put a sling in the boat, you hook it to the end of the hoist, and lift it up from there. So it's quite simple as far as getting in and out of the water. You pull your boat up next to the crane, lift it off, swing the crane, and drop it in the water. And oftentimes there's a dock for you to stand on and receive the boat. With the facilities here, there are creosote-soaked pilings, and we're continually fending our boats off of the pilings. It's a challenge, but nonetheless, we're thankful to have it because it's better than nothing.
What's the draft requirement for those keels?
7 to 8 feet. So dry sailing gets done anything from the smallest of boats. There's 100-footers that dry sail, but in Seattle, there are 35-footers, one design 35s and Melgus 32s that are dry sailed on a regular basis. Weight limitation, we're at 4,000 pounds over here at the cranes. And if we had something that went to 7,000 or 8,000 pounds, that would accommodate a lot more boats. And I think more people would be going the direction of dry setting. We just don't have the option to at this point.
And these can't be picked with a, like a forklift, one of those forklift options. Those work for some boats on a hard face, but not these.
No. No, there's typically a pick point at the balance point of the boat, and it just gets hauled up by a single sling.
Okay, well, I think that's all my questions. Thank you.
Commissioner Briscoe, you got anything else?
No, I think we need to move on and have a internal discussion at some point, whether it's an executive session or, but we're not going to solve anything this evening. I have no more questions.
Yeah, thank you for bringing this to our attention. It's clearly been highlighted, and we will be discussing it at length. It's a
Thank
incredible
you.
opportunity, so thank you.
All right.
All right, moving on to my favorite thing, Q2 financials. Thanks, Jeff.
Thanks. Tamara Slabjack, CFO, Port of Bellingham. So this is our standard quarterly report. The financial part of it, just as a reminder, is to report variances from budget. And spoiler alert, there aren't many, so this might be brief. So we'll just dive right in. The top line there is total revenues. First 6 months, 15.8 million compared to budget 16.3, so not as many revenues as we had planned for, but better than the same time period last year, 15.3. Total expenses, 12.2, about $1 million better than we budgeted, not spending as much, and but more than prior year. So bottom line is so far better than we planned, but not as good as last year. So looking at each division, the aviation financial highlights are shown here. Revenues and expenses are almost the same as budget. Parking and concession fees are a little lower than we planned, but still higher than last year. So nothing major to report out at the airport. Did want to mention the employments. So for the first 6 months, employments have stayed steady for the past 3 years, but we are still not at pre-pandemic levels. The marinas are kind of the same story. Revenues expected, expenses below budget, and right at last year. So we're running right on track there too as well. Shipping terminal, this is really the only big variance. So we had planned, so when we do the budget, we do it in the fall and we try to anticipate what the next year is going to bring. And we had planned for some rock through September. But then the construction schedule came about and we needed to vacate that. So this will look the same throughout the year because of that construction that we're not able to use the dock. And then cruise terminal, revenues and expenses better than planned and better than last year. So tracking better. And then moving right along, real estate. I expect the revenues to even out. They're a little bit higher than budget, but we have one major tenant that pays their concession fees in the beginning of the year for the whole year, for the prior year. So that's why that's a little bit up, but I expect it to be pretty steady. And then overhead, again, these are very predictable costs. It's just the cost of doing business. So those are pretty easy to budget. And then our public priorities, of course, the revenue is mainly meetings and events, and that department's pretty busy, as expected. And expenses are a little lower than budget, a little higher than last year, though. So that's kind of it in a nutshell, and that flows through to a strong balance sheet. The bottom line is what I like to focus on. $298 million of net assets 6 months ago, and we're creeping up on $300 million at the end of June. And where we have our current investments, there's $14 million in these federal securities, earning an average of 3.69%. And these can be anywhere between 1 and 5 years. So that's why it's not as volatile. And then the balance of the invested cash is in the LGIP. And at the end of June, we were earning 5.4% on that money. And that's about the same through the whole year. I looked back January through June, and we were at 5.2 to 5.5 for all 6 months. So we're earning a nice return on those monies. And then going to our compliance stormwater program, both are in compliance, including training and record keeping. The airport, no sample variances. And the shipping terminal, only 3 exceedances at 1 location, so significantly better. And I know the commission did get an update in the weekly update with more detail on this.
Back to those investments.
Yeah.
For the amount that we're getting in interest, what do we do with that extra money that comes in from our interest return? Does that go into a general fund for expenses, or does it get added to the amount of reserves that we have, or just increase our investment?
Yeah, so I actually budget that in our cash flow every year. I take a look at what we're expecting, and so we factor in that money in our budgeting. So it just goes back into the general fund, and yeah. Public records requests. Oh, I feel so sorry for Marlena. She is up to her eyeballs. We've had 75 requests, and several of them are quite large. She's got 7 very large open requests right now, taking a lot of her time. But they're spread out just over a variety of topics.
Can you give us the largest 2?
Sure. Oh, I
Said
left
you had
my
a couple.
glasses over there. Well, there's a lot of environmental records. There's Harcourt. There's the Fairhaven Marine Industrial Repair. Records relating to the BST rail spur. They're just really across the board. And there's some environmental on C Street. Yeah. Yeah, across the board.
In a broad range of people asking?
Yes. Yes. Broad range. Not one particular one. Yeah. And then finally, our safety reports. Unfortunately, we have had 3 injuries this year, and we've had 38 days time loss. 25 of those days was from an injury that happened last year that they're just continuing to improve and heal. But the good news is Blaine Harbor, Squalicum Harbor, and the shipping terminal have been accident-free for more than 4 years, and Blaine is START certified again. So I wanted to point that out. I promised it was brief. Any questions, any information you'd like more information on?
Commissioner Briscoe?
No, it was but I guess I am a little disappointed because we seem to have lost the joke we start with usually. So I'm disappointed about that, but other than that, it was good.
What do you call 100 baby sheep rolling down a hill?
100 baby sheep?
A landslide.
A landslide. There, you finished with the grand finale.
Okay.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman?
I don't have any additional questions, thanks.
Yeah, and as stated before, we went through the audit, and it was incredibly good report. As a commission, we need to feel proud of the job that Tamara and Rob are doing at keeping the financial wheels on the ground, and our reputation is stellar with the auditors. So,
Commissioners, I'll just add to that we also recently went through a ratings drill, and Moody's reaffirmed our current rating and actually hinted that in the near future we could be getting a better rating.
They gave us a few items that could potentially increase our rating. That was positive.
Oh.
Yeah.
I have nothing more. Do you? Commissioner Briscoe, you good?
Say, Tamara, do you know what the fish said when he ran into the wall?
Oh, damn.
You knew that one.
Do you really
Impressive,
you
impressive.
really think, Bobby, that you were gonna? We're going to go to our second public comment period. Now is the time, if something has stirred you through the meeting, to feel free to come up to the microphone, state your name and what you want to address the commission with.
Hi, my name is Mike Powell. I work in your marina as a local yacht rigger and ran the BYC youth program for 10 years in the past. So I wanted to add some support to Jeff's talk about dry sailing and just add a couple of other facts to it. One of it is the small boat sailing and racing is a big stepping stone for the youth fleets. It's where a lot of the kids get involved at a time when they can't go into big yachts, they don't have the money for it, and smaller sport boats under 30 feet tends to be a natural place for them. So that allows our youth sailors to stay within the sport of sailing when we often lose them. And secondly, on a national and global level, small boat sailing is something that's really expanding dramatically. And in this region, we have a fleet called the J70s, which are 23 feet. I have one of them. It's one of two in this area. But regionally, within the last 5 years, we went from a handful of boats to over 50 now. And that's happened in all areas around here where they have the facilities for it. And that boat is raced internationally, nationally, and is something that could expand if we had facilities, because these boats have shown up basically where there are places to put them. So I just wanted to add that it is a national trend in racing to go towards smaller boats instead of having the big cruiser races that take a lot more maintenance. These boats are designed for one thing and they do it really well. That's all I have to add. Thanks.
Thank you. Anyone else wishing to speak before the commission?
So real quick, John Stockless, lifelong resident of Whatcom County. I am the second J70 owner, and I've done a lot of keelboat racing and dry sailing across from the web locker. But so anyways, I'm here to support Jeff as well. Thank you.
Last chance, anybody online? If you are online and wish to say something, just raise your hand or make yourself known. Okay, seeing no one, we'll go to other business. And we'll start with the Marad Muckleshoot Tribe Agreement with Brian.
Thanks, Commissioners. Brian Gowan, Director of Environmental and Planning Services. Yeah, and apologies for adding a last-minute add to the agenda. This is an agreement. I think we have a single slide that has a few of the bullet points on it that we're going to get pulled up here. This is an item that was related to the ongoing work at the Bellingham Shipping Terminal that we spoke about earlier, the dredging and improvement modernization project. Yeah, there we go. And it's an agreement that's very similar to one that we approved earlier before the dredging project started with the Suquamish. Actually, recently, in order to push the dredging and the activities a little bit further forward and expand the dredge footprint a little bit based on the new information we had, we went through a permit modification. And during that process, through the Army Corps process, the Muckleshoot Indian tribe expressed some concerns that were not previously, previously unknown to us. And it was regarding barge traffic through Elliott Bay and into Duwamish where that barge is offloaded during their fishing season. And we worked really cooperatively with them. They were very quick. It was very cooperative and productive discussions, provided very detailed information about when their fish openings were going to happen. And Larry Skulton, who spoke earlier, did a great job working with them, primary author of working on this agreement, but really cooperatively developed this agreement to address their concerns. And what it's related to is really that barge traffic. The agreement just indicates that if there's any documented gear damage, well, first of all, we agreed to a very detailed schedule we've discussed with the contractor, where certain days or certain times of a day the barges won't transit that specific area, and the contractor's already agreed to that. It's not a big cost impact or anything. It's just more about communication. And then and we've got a direct contact with the Muckleshoot harvest managers, and they've got a very detailed schedule that they convey to our folks and then to our contractors. And it's a common practice that the barge operators are already familiar with. Then the other piece of this was that if there is any gear damage that's documented due to our transit through that area, there's a compensation of that for documented costs for any gear damage. We don't expect that would occur, but we did have a provision in there for that. So with that, the only reason we'll bring it forward right now is that we only have 2 commission meetings during one in July and one in August. And because the project, as Larry indicated, is already underway and dredging, we wanted to add this to the other business. So staff recommends approval on it. And I think we had a motion that we could read that was, that Carrie could read, and if you have any questions before that, I'm here to help.
Commissioner Briscoe?
No, I'm good with that. Are we going to read a motion and vote on it, or?
Yeah. You good?
I don't have any questions.
I just wanted to reaffirm that you discussed an engineer with social skills to negotiate a contract.
He did a great job. He did a fantastic job. The only reason I'm up here is I do some of the tribal coordination, but majority of this was really Larry's great work.
He's shaking his head, saying, "Don't ever do that to me again."
An engineer with social skills.
I don't believe it.
That's a unicorn. Thank you for your work on that, Mr. Skoll.
All right, motion to approve the executive director to enter into an agreement with Muckleshoot Indian Tribe regarding maintenance dredging at the Bellingham Shipping Terminal.
Now, Commissioner Briscoe.
Yes.
Commissioner Shepard.
Also yes.
Commissioner Bell is also a yes.
Great. Thanks,
Thank you for
Commissioners.
bringing this forward. All right, on to other business. Commissioner Briscoe.
I have none.
Mr. Shepard.
Yeah, I wanted to start off with a update on the successful Tune-Up Festival. I got to go there all 3 days, brought my family down multiple times. It was really a fantastic event. Kudos to all the organizers and all of the collaboration with our port team to put that on. You could see from the organizers how appreciative they are of the partnership with the port and them being able to put on a really great event that seemed to be fantastically well attended to me.
Commissioners, I'm going to start with 4th of July because that went well as well. We had 4th of July at Swanage Park, as we traditionally do. We also did something a little different on the waterfront. We allowed Trackside to double their space. So they moved their fence line out to cover our grass area and the Peter Paulson stage. And that gave people a better opportunity to view the fireworks, and it also greatly increased the capacity that can be down there inside the beer garden. Both events at Swanage Park and at the waterfront there went extremely well. No major problems. And it's the first time in the 4th of July that's happened and that I can remember. Our meetings and events team, led by Stephanie Wiley, just did an incredible job. I think having in-house security helped. And also just getting more of these things under our belt helped us to do these in a little more efficient manner. But we worked very well with the Colson team, with Carrie's team on the portal there. I think they all benefited from a pretty robust day. And it was just, teamwork all around, and it showed. So 4th of July was a great success, and I think the fireworks was one of the better shows we've had as well. So thank you to People's Bank, and then, of course, the port kicks in some funds on that as well. And the tune-up was the same thing. It was just a repeat a week later. 1 week later, we had the tune-up, and again, we showed off our best properties. This was all down on the waterfront. Unlike years past, they took the whole footprint that they leased from us, and they filled it. And I think they had about 30% more vendors, and they had 30% more attendees than they've had in the past. So once again, the meetings events team and Carrie and her team just did an incredible job on organizing this from the get-go, making sure it was safe and secure. A major pet peeve of mine, and people hear me say it all the time, is cars running all over that site, and that was done minimally. It was, cars were there to deliver what they needed to, and then they left. And so again, that's Stephanie and Carrie's work showing there. The tune-up folks are getting their stick down. They're getting it down so they're more efficient. They know what to look for. They know how much fence to rent. They know where that needs to go. They know where the security points need to be. And I think the layout this year was the best one yet as well. As you know, you could go down to Trackside. You could go down to Bin 13. You could go down to the filling station, and all those without a ticket to Trackside. The Trackside event was simply the pump track and the main stage and the jumps. And my wife and I got to go down and see the jumps. I should have put a picture up for it, but there was a 9-year-old flipping backflips, and he did that 20 plus times. And the kid is, I mean, I've got a great photo of him next to the tile tank, and he's 25 feet in the air, eyes glued on the landing, and just the concentration for a 9-year-old was incredible. But the whole event was like that. You saw people put out their best, and people going up to Galbraith and having a great time, spending money in our local restaurants, staying in our hotels. That 9-year-old kid, by the way, is from Florida, and this is his second year attending the Northwest Tune-Up. So he comes from Florida to go here, then he heads up to Crankworks up at Whistler after that. So again, Eric Brown, Brandon Watts, Carrie, and Stephanie, just an incredible job putting those events on. I couldn't be prouder.
Well, it really seems to be doing what we hope it would do with driving that economic development revenue, coming into the community, and really activating a super important and critical part of our local economy here. I think it continues to just show the value of that space for events. We don't have a whole lot of those places that we can use to activate people and build community. And we've had the 4th of July, we've had the circus has been down there, we've had the tune-up, and we're going to have a couple more. I'd love, Carrie, for you to give us an update on what else is coming, but I know we've got the some Olympic viewing, we've got the Noisy Water Mural Festival as well. But, I think it's just a valuable spot for bringing people together, and the more we can do to keep fostering that and preserving that into the future, I think does our community well.
Women's World Cup. You want to talk about that?
Sure, we're still in the planning stages, but Colshan has agreed to host it, and we have a huge screen that you can see from a nice distance, and that's going to be erected where their stage is now. And then, I don't know if I mentioned, but it's on Sunday, the 28th. The doors open at 11:15, and the event starts at noon. And we got community sponsorship. Also, Tyler's team threw in some coin. And this event was driven by Gina. So Gina came to me and said, "Hey, can we do this?" And I roped in Stephanie, and we all sat down and we made it work. And Corey Olson.
And is that for the Olympic viewing?
Mm-hmm.
So that
this is World Cup. Right. This is Women's World Cup.
This is the Germany. Yep, World's Cup.
Okay.
Yep, it's live.
Oh, it is Olympics.
Yeah, it's Olympics.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Sorry, if I can add a little bit. So I think what you're thinking about is it's part of the FIFA Men's World Cup 2026 event that's happening down here. So it's a women's game, the U.S. women national team playing Germany for the Olympics, but the Men's World Cup crew will be there. So they're going to have like a former Sounders player and some ambassadors and things like that, kind of hyping everybody up with some FIFA-related raffles and that sort of thing.
And like the Olympics, we're right between Vancouver and Seattle, so we're bound to catch a lot of the hotel business and a lot of the traffic.
Well, this should be kind of a preview for the Men's World Cup, right? And what we can do here during that event, because there will be events in Seattle and there'll be events in Vancouver for that. And so we're in between them, and yeah. Gina wants to talk.
Well, not necessarily, but I thought I'd clear up a couple things. So Gina Stark, Economic Development Project Manager. So the precipice of doing the Women's Olympic was that we were asked by Seattle FIFA 2026 to do this. And this is an opportunity for us to shine because we went to them and we wanted to be the official fan city for the FIFA 2026 because we are right in between the two. And this is an perfect time for us to shine and to capture that economically. So in partnership with tourism and with Colshan, we said we wanted to do this big. Spokane is just doing it in a bar. And we're like, no. we've got trackside, we can do this bigger. So that's why we're doing this really big. So yeah, we have, Taylor, who's a former sounder, so he will be here. But we also have Tremaris Lane, who is of the Golden Clan of the Lummi Nation, who will also be there. So it's an opportunity for us to have celebrities as well. So I'm really excited for Whatcom County to really show off what we can do and to show off the port. So it's going to be a great opportunity for us.
So Tremaris Lane has a connection to the port, and that her mom is Lydia Bennett, our former director of real estate.
Yeah. So look forward for all of you to attend.
All right.
See, and this is why we needed that electronic reader sign on the corner to advertise this.
Hey, Bobby, you got me. So just a 30-second rundown. I brought it up. So Caution has the Acid Ball Rock Music Fest, and that's August 2nd. Noisy Waters, August 16th to the 18th. And then on August 24th, we have the Cascade Bicycle Club. Bellingham Bay Marathon goes through there on September 22nd. We have the Mighty Bayou Opossums. It's a New Orleans band, and they are going to be set up at the Peter Paulson stage from 3 to 5 on the 14th. And then Caution is hosting an Oktoberfest September 21st. And then our end all season is October 31st, and it's our Halloween event. And I've got Tyler trying to work to get us on the map for trick-or-treating, so we can have them, come down to the portal and be a part of that. So we'll see.
Lots of good stuff. Thanks for the update. Appreciate it.
Just another kudo. The idea that you would do the Independence Day event and then in a week turn around and do that is quite a feat. Just to get it on, get it out, get it cleaned up, get it ready to go for the next round, and to be good at both.
We'd like to do it every weekend.
It is. That's monumental, and so kudos to the staff. Are you done?
Yep, that's it for me.
All right, I've just got a couple things. I'll start with the small cities meeting this morning. Just a lot of stuff going on here in the county that we need to kind of just have our eye on. And but at the end of the meeting, I was having a long discussion with the mayor of Blaine, and she would like to do a joint meeting with the port, with commissioners and with the council, to talk about what our plans are, what the vision is, what the city needs to have done, what we can do. There seems to be a lot of momentum in Blaine right now, and we want to make sure we do it right. They want to make sure they do it right. They want to make sure that we're coordinated in that effort. And Bonnie was really wonderful in asking for just us to put that on our calendar at some point for us to sit down with the council members in Blaine, maybe an evening, something where we can all sit around a table and have a discussion. So that's number one. So if we could put that on the calendar sometime.
We'll get that done. Yep. Special meeting, we'll get that.
Okay. Industrial ground, are you raising your hand, Bobby, or are you just? Industrial ground continues to be a topic of discussion. All the small cities have a stake in this. Again, I had a conversation with the mayor of Sumas. They would clearly like to have a couple of places where they would like to expand their industrial ground. So as we go through the comprehensive plan, as we talk about what industrial ground is necessary, involving the small cities in that discussion would be beneficial to everybody. And I do know that Sumas specifically has got a request out for some expansion and would like to have our help in advocating for that. That being said, there's still a reality with industrial ground that needs to be discussed, and that is that it is under attack, and there are certain things in industrial ground that we can't compromise on. And I think I gave the example today that if, let's say, Cowden Gravel wanted to decide to go, put a recycling operation for their cement plant somewhere, that would take a grinder. or if you're going to do a wood chipping operation where you're chipping wood to turn it into mulch, that's going to require industrial ground, and it's all going to have to be transported. So we need a serious voice at the table with the county council. There's a tremendous letter writing campaign to try to stop industrial growth, specifically in the Alderwood neighborhood. So not to be dogged or too high-horsed about this, but there's some things that just need industrial ground to be done. And we have buffers, we have ways to mitigate some of the problems. You couldn't put a cement grinder, for example, today on a piece of property like you could 10 years ago and not have it completely encased and not have some of the safeguards placed around it. So some of the fear-mongering that is going is hyperbole, and I want to make sure that that's understood, that it's 2024, and no matter what we do with industrial ground, it's going to be work, and it's going to be sometimes noisy, and it's going to sometimes be dirty, but there are mitigating factors, and we just need to make sure those get incorporated. Instead of taking away the industrial ground, we just need to make sure we put those mitigating factors. Anybody listening, please write the county council and make sure that those points are understood. Then we had I got to listen to the presentation twice, once at the Small Cities and once at the Business Commerce Committee with the Health Department and their resolution. I first want to state that I've never seen a resolution with more whereases, 13 full pages of whereases on the resolution. But there is a big push for shelter and for the county to take a move on homelessness and on housing. Last EDI, we had our last EDI meeting, and they are going to schedule a special session for EDI board members to discuss what do we need to do with EDI funds to keep it within the rails. Essentially, EDI funding has been used from everything to build bridges to through a park to things that aren't necessarily economic development, but qualify because there's a lot of money out there. So the idea is for the committee to sit down and discuss how EDI funds will help economic development and what was the purpose of those funds. And again, I know we have a couple of things that we want to put EDI money in for. We just want to make sure that those funds are available when we need them for economic development. My last one is a comment. Would love to have more employments at the airport, but when Alaska's charging $400 one way on a day to go out of Bellingham, where are you, Kip? It's impossible to justify that kind of a cost to fly out of Bellingham. And the airlines are their own worst enemies in this at some level. So that's all I've got. Anybody got anything else?
I had one thing I forgot. I wanted to just give a shout out to Representative Ramel for organizing a really fantastic meeting yesterday. He put together a group from the city of Bellingham, from our utility partner Corex at our district energy facility, the Western Washington University, Port, and several other stakeholders from Olympia as well, to talk about Western being a viable partner in connecting to our district energy system at the waterfront. And it's still in the exploration phase, but it was really positive to see that level of engagement, and Rep. Ramel did a really nice job bringing together a great team. We're going to continue to support that idea and see if any of our resources or our grant funds are able to be used to study that capacity potential. The more people we get on our district energy system, the better it is. It functions better. It's better for the users, and it's Western's under some pressure to take a really significant bite out of their carbon output by working to move off a natural gas-fired steam plant up there. So good stuff, and nice job with putting that on.
Okay, with that, meeting adjourned.